Good morning, everybody. My name is Stephen Othony, and this is Othony's Radio, where this week I'm going to be talking about Chapter 2 of my serial fiction series, Anomalies. Welcome to week 2 of the Anomalies discussion. I can confirm that I did find the old version of Anomalies Chapter 2. And what I mean by old version is like a draft that I wrote a year and a half ago before I revised it like in February, a few months ago. So that's cool. So yeah, we're just going to be picking the discussion right up where I left it last week. So it's very similar to last week. If you didn't see last week's video, I'm just going to give you a summary of Anomalies Chapter 1, just in case you haven't read it. I mean, if you haven't, you really should. It's really cool. You could find it authony.com/anomalies or Instagram at Stephen Authony. Basically what happened in Chapter 1. This lonely kid, he's at a prom, and then he meets this girl at the prom, and she's crying, and he's like, hey, let's go dance. And then, she says, hey, let's go dance. And then they go dance. And then 5 years later, they're still together. They spent 5 years together, and then proposes to her. And then on the ride home from proposing, there's a bright light, and then Adam's driving. He sees a bright light. He gets blinded. He crashes the car into it like a ditch. And then she flies through the window. Her head slams into a tree. She dies. And then he gets out of the car, checks on her, finds out the light was coming from inside the forest. The call was coming from inside the house. And then he finds out it's a ring. He grabs the ring. He gets sent to another universe. And then 2 years after that whole accident, he's looking for another version of her across the multiverse. And that's where Chapter 1 leaves off. Chapter 2 kind of picks up right up from that. Before I get into the shenanigans with Anomalies, I'm going to say a couple of things. Number 1, Chapter 3. We're up to Chapter 3 in publishing, so you can read the first 3 chapters. That said, since I'm talking about Chapter 2, I'm not going to be discussing much of Chapter 3. I'm going to leave that for next week. Number 2, this chapter, I say in the warning on the website, it contains a depiction of self-harm. It contains a reference to self-harm. And if that's going to bother you, please keep that in mind. Act accordingly. If that bothers you, like, too much, you don't have to read it. Whatever. I don't know. I'm kind of new to this, so I don't really know what the procedure is with trigger warnings. I'm just trying to do what I can to keep people safely engaged in whatever content I'm creating. So that's that. Number 3, speaking of trigger warnings like that, I think when I publish the books or the chapters for real into a book, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So when you open up a page, there's going to be like big text saying, see the next page for a trigger warning or whatever. So if you need the trigger warning, you can turn to that page and you can have it. But if you don't need it, you can skip that page and just read the story. Is that a good idea? I don't really know. I'm going to do some research to try to figure out like how to properly warn an audience when like a sensitive scene is coming up in a piece of media, because a lot of people don't need the trigger warnings, but a lot of people do need the trigger warnings, so they definitely should be there. But maybe like I'm gonna try to put them there in a way that kind of keeps the whole thing a mystery for those who don't need them. I don't know. Is that a good thing to do? I don't want to be like too insensitive for people who need them. But they'll still exist. I don't know. Please let me know what you think about that. I'm new to this, so like I'll take any form of criticism, any form of just ideas to figure this whole thing out, if that makes sense. Now that that's taken care of, let's get into the chapter. So the chapter starts off, he appears behind a dumpster in Universe 1001, and when he appears, this dumpster is by Arlene's Diner, this well-known diner that's completely fictional in this story. He appears behind this dumpster, and he's like, wow, this universe is, like, scarily familiar, in the sense that, like, he recognizes it from his own world. Like, Arlene's looks like the exact same as it does on his world, which is strange because he's used to this, like, all these 1,000 different worlds that he's been to, where Arlene's is like a little bit different, but this one, like, everything seems the same as he remembers growing up on his world. And he's looking around, but he's surprised to find out that somebody spotted him appearing behind the dumpster, and it's this teenage kid that's like, "Holy shit! I just saw you. You got to tell me how you did that." And then Adam's like trying to shush him. He's trying to be like, "Okay, okay, what'd you see?" And he's like, "I saw you. I saw everything. I just saw you appear behind a dumpster. Like, what the hell?" And then Adam's like, "Yeah, okay, so I can kind of teleport, but it's a long story." And then the kid's like, "You're gonna have to do better than that. You're gonna have to tell me this long story." And then Adam's like, "What are you doing out so late?" He's like, "I'm going to a friend's." And then Adam's like, "Just don't tell anybody, all right? Here's a story." And then he tells him pretty much everything that happened in chapter one. And then they go into a friend's house. They're talking about what Adam's gonna do when he finds her. Adam's like, if I don't find her low key, I might just give up because I mean, if I don't find her on the 1,000th attempt, maybe it's a sign. And then the kid's like, that's kind of stupid because the multiverse is like endless. So you got this, dude. And I'm like, thanks. And then the kid's like, hey, if you can teleport, how about you go grab me a Snickers bar from that gas station over there? And then Adam's like, dude, okay, I know that's probably like some weird thing that you guys do on this universe, but I gotta let you know that on my universe, it's kind of illegal to just steal things from stores. And then Josh, he's like, it's illegal here too, genius. I just want a snack. So Adam, he reaches out his hand. He's like, all right, I'm going to get the snack. He he extends his arm and he's like, all right, I'm going to get the snack. And then suddenly the snack falls from his like extended hand, hits the ground. So this whole scene was just kind of written as a way to explain how Adam's powers work. Basically, he can't change the position he's in when he's teleported. So like, for example, if he's teleporting with his arm up like this, he can't teleport across the room and then as he's teleporting close his fist, right? Like if he's teleporting across the room, his hand is like open through that teleportation. Does that make sense? So he has to have his arm reaching forward. So when he teleports to the Snickers bar, his hand teleports on top of the Snickers bar, and then when he teleports back, he's touching the Snickers bar, and then he's teleporting the Snickers bar back to where Joshy is, and then it just falls right on the ground because he didn't grab it. He just kind of he teleported in and out with the Snickers bar. Does that all make sense? I hope so, and if it doesn't, I explain it way better in the actual story. This is just a little summary. So basically, Adam's also saying like, okay, I got to get my hand like positioned, like leveled position, so it's like on top of the Snickers bar, and then like he explains to Joshua that this is something he can do. He can like see other places. Like he can like his vision can like leave his body and also teleport places and like see other places so he knows where he's teleporting before he teleports. And through this clairvoyance, as Joshi so fluently defines, Adam notices that the clerk at the gas station picks his nose and wipes it under the counter. And then Joshi's like, dude, that's nasty. I don't know. Like, I just name dropped the kid. Anyways, and then Adam's like, I know. Watch this. Okay, this is a really fun part to talk about. Let's go. So Adam winds back, and then he slaps in front of him. And then as he does, the clerk who wiped his bogeys under the counter, like jolts to the side. And he's like, ow, what the heck? And then the kid's like, dude, do you have telekinesis too? And then Adam's like, no, what I did was mid slapping motion, I teleported in front of the guy, hit him, and then I teleported back. So that's also kind of explaining how Adam can choose what can teleport with him. Like he can choose what's touching him. Like if he's holding a bottle, he can choose whether or not the bottle teleports with him. It's kind of cool. And the reason why I had fun writing this part in particular was because I wasn't sure, like, if you were to slap, right, and only teleport in front of somebody and slap like this, it's still gonna hurt because, like, even though it's such a little distance, it's still gonna have that speed that he comes in with. So it's still gonna hurt. But what I wanted to know, and what I ended up asking a lot of people, is if I were to go like this, if somebody teleported right here, slapped, and then teleported away, does the victim of the slap still move, or does he just feel the sting? Because like when you regularly get slapped, there's like a push, there's like a follow through. But if you were to just get slapped really fast like this, is it just a, like, or does it like, is there still some force behind that pushes you? And I talked to, who did I talk to? I talked to my family, and I talked to my old roommate, who was a science major. And all four of us collectively agreed that there would still be like maybe not a full, but like just a little, like a jolt, like a, like j- enough power to create some movement. So there's some movement, and this was just like a really fun part to write because it's my first time getting to like a physics question that only relates to my book. Like I guess like if anybody with teleportation powers happens to be doing this slapping move, um, then they can do that. But this is just kind of like it feels like a pretty unique moment, and it was just really cool to have something like that where I'm trying to like figure out the physics, um, and what's going on, and like it's just like a little line that says the guy like jolted a little bit, but I don't know, it was still really important to me to try to get it accurate. So maybe when I actually publish the book, I'll talk to I don't know, should I go to some physicists and try to figure this out? But I don't know. I just think it's a really cool part. And then the kid's like, dude, you're overpowered. And then Adam's like, dude, I know. And the kid's like, dude, I gotta go home soon. If I don't go home by what, 8 o'clock, Marie's gonna whoop my ass. And then Adam's like, dude, who is Marie? And then the kid's like, dude, it's a long story. And then Adam's like, dude, you gotta tell me. And the kid's like, dude, okay. So, kid's like, all right. He's starting the story off. Okay, I don't know why I'm getting all silly about this. This is kind of serious topic. He says, when I was 5, my dad was shot by a cop, and that's kind of how he starts the story. And then we get a flashback to 2016 in the same universe on Halloween. So later that year, after his dad was killed, he wakes up early for school, and he's like, "Mom, look at my Green Lantern costume," because he made a Green Lantern costume for Halloween. He didn't make the costume. I think his mom bought him the costume from Walmart, but he made the Green Lantern ring. And he's like, "Mom, look at this! Like, isn't this so cool?" And then his mom's like, "Joshy, it's 6 in the morning. We're still not leaving for school for a while. Can you just like let me sleep for a little bit more?" And then the kid's like, "Oh man!" And then he goes upstairs because like he was really excited to show his mom the ring, but she kind of shut him down. And then his mom feels terrible. Oh my god, does she feel terrible? Because she's been trying really hard to like get over what happened to her husband, of course, while also trying to keep a smile on Joshy's face, and she's just not able to do both. So she brings him to school, makes sure to tell him she loves him, and then when he leaves, he exits the car. He doesn't say it back. I think, what did I say? He just didn't hear her. He was too focused on showing everyone at school his ring, the ring that he made, and his costume since it was Halloween, and he was like showing everybody at school his costume and everything. But she just thinks like he was still really upset from that morning. I don't know how to talk about this. And so Joshy gets called to the office. There's a cop standing there, and then the the cop tells Joshy the upsetting news that his mom took her own life. And then yeah, I do a really cool thing here where I kind of enter the cop's point of view. I want this story of Anomalies to be like kind of omniscient third person. Is that what it's called? Where like I kind of hop between people's minds. Like I kind of stick with the protagonist, but like if I want to go to Joshy's POV, see what he's thinking, I'm gonna go there. If I want to go to the cop's POV, see what the cop's thinking after telling this boy this just devastating news, I can do that. And so I do that for a little while, and I talk about how he's like, hey, listen, he's talking to his wife, and he's like, hey, this kid's been through so much, we gotta adopt him because now that's both of his parents that are just gone, and so someone's got to take care of him. And Kyle, this officer, brings it upon himself to be the guy to take care of this kid, and I just think that's super sweet. And hey, I just realized yesterday was Mother's Day. So let me just say this: if you're a mother and you're out there and something like this happens, or anything, really anything happens, and you're just having a hard time getting you and your kid through it, you got this, man. The reason why this scene is so like difficult to talk about is I don't want it to. I because like I said, I kind of enter this like third person omniscient thing. We kind of enter the mom's head for like a little bit, where she feels like what she's doing is justified. And I don't want that to come across how that's like ever justified or ever the right answer. It's not. So just, I mean, if you're ever in a situation like this, that's not the move, okay? And if you're a mother and you're struggling and something like this happens, and you're just trying to get you and your kid by. Um, hey, you got this. I'm sure you're doing everything you can, and you're doing great. Happy Mother's Day to those who celebrate. Okay, let's get back to the cool multiversal stuff and like get get out of the real stuff. Let's do some cool shit. Anyway, we jump back to the present where Adam's like, "Dude, I'm so sorry to hear that," and the kid's like, "I know. I've told the story a bunch of times. Everybody's so sorry to hear that. You don't gotta tell me." And then there's this moment where Josh tosses the wrapper on the ground, and then Adam says, "Nope, you gotta pick that up." And then Josh is like, "Dude, like it's a wrapper. You don't litter. Like you don't shoplift. You don't litter. Like why are you such a goody two shoes?" And then Adam's like, "Dude, if I'm gonna be invading all these worlds, I might as well leave them better than I found them." And then Joshy picks up the wrapper. I think. Oh, and then Joshy's like, "But okay, when I was 5," and then Adam's like, "Dude, don't give me that." And then the kid rolls his eyes. He's like, "Whatever." He picks up the wrapper. And then the kid's like, "Dude, I'm not gonna make it back home. I'm not gonna make it home in time. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do." And then Adam's like, "I got this." And then he teleports the kid to his house. First time I think teleporting another person with him, which is pretty cool. Adam does mention he's teleported a dog before, but this is his first time teleporting a person. And just like that, Joshy makes it home in time. But before Adam leaves to continue his adventure, Joshy's like, "Hey, I got a clue. I remember you saying earlier that your girl Claire, her last name is Black, and I have an art teacher named Miss Black." And then Adam's like, "Oh my God, Claire loves art." So he's like, "All right, maybe this art teacher is Claire." And then Joshy's like, "Yeah, so basically she gets this coffee every morning, so maybe you can run into her at this coffee shop and like talk to her." And then Adam's like, "Dude, I see all, I know all. So I'm gonna see you walk into your school and then go see this teacher." And then the kid's like, "That's creepy, but that's cool." And then Adam's like, "Thank you." He leaves, and then Joshy goes inside, and then Marie says, "You're cutting it close." And then Joshy like slings back this like sly remark. He's like, "Yeah, I was worried you were gonna chew me out, so I made sure to get home quick." He was all upset, and then he goes up the stairs, and then Marie stops him and is like trying to talk to him and be like, I'm just worried about you. You don't really talk to us much. Like, I just want to make sure you're okay each night." That's like why she has this curfew." And then Marie's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for." She just apologizes to him for chewing him out and all that. And then she's like, "Dinner will be ready soon." And then as she's going back to the kitchen, Joshy surprises her with a hug. And then he says, "You don't have to worry about me." And then she says, "Okay, thank you." And then he says, "No, thank you." And that's how the chapter ends. Isn't that sweet? I'm saying that because the original version of chapter 2 was so different. Sorry for the summary, especially if you've read the chapter already. That was just so I can get to how the original chapter 2 was different. And I kind of like how I'm like going about these chapters because 1 and 2 I can discuss, I can summarize the chapter and then go back to how the original chapter was before all these changes that I made recently. And then since I'm doing chapter 3 next week, before chapter 4 comes out, I can kind of talk about what my plan is going forward. It's a genius. Listen, I'm kind of a genius, okay? Don't tell anybody though. Okay, sorry, but anyways, it kind of starts out this pretty much the exact same. Um, yeah, Adam appears, he looks around a bit. This boy's like, "Holy shit, how'd you do that?" So I think the teleportation works a bit differently. I don't think Adam has clairvoyance with the ring because there's this conversation between Adam and Joshy where Joshy's like, "So if I was wearing that ring, I could teleport?" And then Adam's like, "Yeah, but it takes a little while to navigate. So if you teleported somewhere and didn't know how to get back, I would kind of be stranded." And then Joshy's like, "Fair, fair." Um, and then it kind of goes back to like the same thing where Adam just tells him everything that happened in chapter 1. And then in this version, Joshy was going to a clothing store called Zips. And then Adam's like, "Do you have a curfew?" And Joshy's like, "Yeah, but it's not for another half hour. So I was just going to see if there was a jacket." He's like, "I just wanted this jacket. I just got the money for it. And I was going to go get the jacket." And then Adam's looking at the store window and saw the jacket. And he's like, "This one?" And then Joshy's like, "Yeah, the brown one." And then he's like, "Do you got the money on you?" And then Joshy's like, "Yeah, but it doesn't matter. The shop's closed anyway." And then Adam says, "You forget, locks can't stop me." So Josh is like, "Oh hell yeah!" and then gives Adam the $60 that jacket costs. Um, and then Adam teleports in the store, grabs the jacket, drops the money, goes outside, gives Joshy the jacket, and then it's time for Joshy's backstory. So this one's a little different. It's not on Halloween. Um, this time it's his mom waking him up. Um, she's crying. Oh, I don't think so. In the published version, um, his dad was already dead, and him and his mom are kind of like grieving him together. But this time, I think he died that morning, and then she died a little bit later that same day. So that was just a loaded day for him. I'm kind of glad I separated the two events. Um, but anyway, yeah, he gets up, he asks where his dad is, and then everything happens. Oh, so this time I interrupt the flashback, and I cut to the present. Oh, and then Joshy asks for a Twix from the gas station. And then Adam's like, all right, do you got the money for it? And then Joshy's like, I was kind of hoping you would just run in and get it for me. And then Adam teleports in the store, gets it, comes back out. I don't know how I was planning on going through this whole story without Adam like having the clairvoyance to like see where he's teleporting before he teleports. That's kind of crazy. I don't know how you would do that. But anyway, he gets the candy bar. We get back to the story. It kind of sucks that I interrupted the story. I'm glad I didn't in the published version, but anyway. And then we go to the phone call. Joshy goes to the office, hears the news. I wrote it pretty sad, but I think it's sad enough in the published version, so I think it's fine. And then he's like, "Yeah, uh, the cop kind of adopted me, and that was that whole thing." And then uh, Josh was like, "Yo, I got this art teacher named Miss Black," and then Adam's like, "Hey, cool. She loved art, so maybe that's probably her." And then this time, since Adam doesn't have the clairvoyance, is like he planned to, um, he did plan to uh, go to coffees and try to find her before school, and that's kind of where chapter 3 was gonna go. So Adam leaves, and that's that. So yeah, originally, since Adam didn't have the vision, he was gonna go to coffees before school and try to catch her, see if that was Claire. But the published chapter 2 is like he's like, "Hey, I'm just gonna see if that's her in your class." And then Josh is like, "Fair." So that's kind of where we leave off. All right, and then one more thing before I close this out. The original version of chapter 2 didn't have that ending scene with Joshy and Marie. And that whole thing was kind of like a last minute addition. Like I was getting through finishing up the chapter, Adam left, and then Joshy kind of walked into the house, and then I kind of wanted to continue from there, and I added on that little scene between him and Marie. And I just think the scene is so important because in the scene, Marie kind of feels like she's messing up with Joshy, especially because Joshy isn't hers, and she's like putting in the effort to try, and she's really trying to explain to him that she's trying, and Joshy gives her a hug, even though she does make some mistakes. Joshy gives her that hug, and it's like, hey, I appreciate you trying. So this was kind of like I was talking about earlier. This was kind of the scene that kind of says, hey, what Joshy's mom did wasn't the right thing to do, and so it just kind of explains it from there. My phone's going off, but anyway, that's how I end the chapter, and I'm kind of glad it ends that way. All right, and that's the original version of Anomalies Chapter 2. I don't know if I did like a crazy good job summarizing the published version of Chapter 2, but like I mean, if you're this far into the video, you've either read the first two chapters or you're interested enough to go read them yourself. Because if this is like your first introduction to my Anomalies series, and you just heard what happens in chapters 1 and 2, I mean, you just kind of got everything spoiled for you, I guess. But yeah, if you're interested to hear more before I drop my chapter 3 video next Monday, go read the first 3 chapters. They're on my website and on my Instagram, which I already mentioned. But yeah, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If anybody does leave questions, I will read them and I will try to answer them the next time I talk about Anomalies. Still working on chapter 4, should be out in June. It's going to be great. I posted the full schedule of the rest of the chapters on my YouTube, and I talked about it last week. Chapter 4 will be in June, chapter 5 will be in July, and then the rest of the chapters of the book, there's going to be 10 total, so 6 through 10 are going to be throughout the fall. So that said, guys, that's chapter 2 of Anomalies. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week for the chapter 3 discussion. Thank you.
I don't wanna go back. I don't wanna find you. If I saw you with anyone, I don't know what I'd do. If you told me you were just friends, I don't think I could tell.